Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and I mean, you can tell from the title what we're here to talk about today, and I've given away that it's not just me. Wii Sports is it was an absolute revelation, and it is one of the most iconic Nintendo games ever, even if the characters weren't, like actual original Nintendo creations per se. You made them yourself. I'm talking about the Miis, of course. And the Miis that are in this video are Mr. Xeon.
Man, I've been chatting with a few friends about Quarterback Club on the Nintendo 64 for the past hour, and I have needed another sports game to talk about, so thank you. I needed this right now.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We are also joined by Mr. Felix. That was strangely tuneful. I love the fact that on the call, which you won't hear in the video, you just cut off at the end, because Discord was like, I'm not having any of this. Wii Sports. It was released, I believe, in 2006. Xeon, whenabouts exactly in North America was it released?
Well, you see, Alex, the PlayStation 3, I'll just, for context, released November 17th of 2006. And then the day after is my partner's birthday, coincidentally, of course. And then on the 19th was the day that the Wii and Wii Sports came out, and that's how I know all those things.
How crackers is that? I can't remember when it came out in Europe. 2006, I know that much. I don't care otherwise, frankly. If I'm being brutally honest, it's out. It's history now. But obviously, the big deal with this, and the Wii in general, but more specifically Wii Sports, because it was a pack-in, you bought a Wii, you got Wii Sports, was the motion control. And I don't think that it was the first game with motion controls or anything like that. I think that would be mad to say. But it certainly 100% absolutely popularized the idea, because I mean, come on, it was a Nintendo console, and more importantly, it was extremely accessible. It's this sort of, at the time, there was a reason the code name for the Wii was Revolution, because it was revolutionary. And whilst we may look back on it now and go, ha ha ha, remember, waggle, 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 tennis racket moves, mum's really impressed. That was, kind of, it seems quaint by modern standards, but at the time, this rocked the world, didn't it?
Yeah, and I completely forgot about the fact until now, but you're right, it really did revolutionize gaming. And even so much so that, like, if you look at Xbox during that era, they released the Kinect sensor, the motion camera, and one of the big games for it was Kinect Sports, and so much so they made a second one, which was made by Rare. R.I.P. Just kidding, Rare still does things. But then Sony for PlayStation 3 released the what was it? Just the Move?
The Move?
Yeah. Right?
There was
and
the
Sports
iToy
Champions?
beforehand, but it was pants. I've upset all the iToy fanboys.
All the Sega Superstars fans for the iToy.
Oh, God, it was, wasn't it? Oh, that was a mad time to be alive.
Yeah. But at least on PlayStation 3 now, right, we had these Move controllers, and they still, once again, they created an entire peripheral, which I think the Move got packed in with Sports Champions, so you'll see that game. It's a dime a dozen everywhere, but nobody goes back to play it. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about Kinect Sports, but still to this day, I know we're here to talk about video games, but people still outside of this still talk about Wii Sports and just how impactful it was. Even the theme song.
Ba, 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 ba.
I swear that wasn't the setup, but it worked.
But Xeon, you and I, we weren't old when the Wii came out, but we definitely weren't children.
We're pushing
anymore.
our limits, weren't we?
I was a teenager when the Wii came out. But Felix, you're of a younger generation, and for you, the Wii was a big part of your childhood, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Wii came out when I was 4 or 5 years old. That just says a lot, right? Now, Wii Sports is very nostalgic to me. It's one of those games like Wii Sports, Mario, Super Mario Bros. Wii, and Mario Kart Wii. All those games are just reminiscent of my childhood. And I don't know, Wii Sports was just always a game like, if you got any friends over that didn't normally play video games, you could always play Wii Sports, And I also think that the 5 sports that they choose are perfect. It's perfect variety. the games doesn't feel like too similar, which I think is just really like when you get tired of tennis, play some baseball. When you get tired of baseball, play some bowling, play some golf. You can play boxing, beat the snot out of each other, and you know, it was just so much fun. And then when you were done playing the sports, there was training, which was like each sport had 3 different mini games, which you know, trained you to become better at these sports. So bowling had a game where instead of 10 pins, it progressively got bigger, more pins got added. And, you know, golf, there was like a target practice where you had to hit inside this big target. And stuff like that just made the game so much more replayable, and it also made it so it was much more fun to play single player because, you know, you don't always have friends around to play around with Wii Sports. So training is a wonderful addition to Wii Sports.
It gave it a lot more meat, didn't it? From a single player perspective, because obviously, you know, sort of what Nintendo were pushing with Wii Sports was multiplayer. You know, sort of getting, you know, your grandfather round or whatever, and you know, sort of even grandfather can have a go, even though he's 90, and you know he can swing the Wii remote. It's you know, sort of everyone understands the principles of these games, or at least you know a vast majority of people in the Western world understand the concepts of tennis, baseball, bowling, golf, and boxing. So it's instinctive. It's sort of like it's not how do I play this game. It's sort of so I gotta swing like that. Really? Okay, and just whoa, and it does it. And I mean,
it works.
Yeah, it just works. By modern standards, the motion controls were basic, but it didn't matter. And I think it really captured everyone's imaginations. And I think part of that is, you know, there have been games before, you know, unsurprisingly, before Wii Sports, and there were some that were revolutionary, that, you know, rocked the world and things like that. But I think the thing that made Wii Sports so iconic and so different is the fact that it wasn't look at what's happening on screen as much as it was look at what's happening on screen and then look at me, and it's the same. I mean, it wasn't exactly the same, but it gave that illusion. You had to physically do things, so it was more than just, you know, look at the action on the screen. It was look at the action in real life as well. And for people who enjoy, you know, a game of bowling or something like that, you know, they can just, you don't have to go out. You know, the Wii would... Can you imagine if, in theory, the Wii came out during the pandemic? Can you imagine? I mean, it was popular enough back then. Imagine what it would have been like if it had come out during lockdown.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I'm actually curious to hear, you know, what people have to say about this if they've had experiences. But, you know, me being a person that was like going out and like buying retro games all the time and stuff, I actually saw like when the pandemic kicked in, Wii Sports and Wii's were like selling for way more at GameStop and online, and you know, in thrift stores. Yeah, because I think people were just trying to find another way to have fun inside again. So in a kind of a weird way, Wii Sports had kind of like a renaissance, you know, during that. Is that a proper way of saying it?
It's a very grandiose term for Wii Sports selling again because of a virus.
It's just, it's such a timeless game in a way, you know, even to me, like going back to play this game just to revisit it, was even, you know, by myself was just a lot of fun. It's insane how simple and straightforward it all is, and magical at the same time. You know, I think I talk about on the channel here, I talk about like playing games with my family fairly often because I was just fortunate enough that, you know, a lot of my family wanted to play games with me and stuff, and that was great. And but my grandma was a person that just never really got into them at all, but she like 100% supported it. But now that I think back on it, I think one of the most special times, you know, with her, like trying to play a game was Wii Sports, you know, like, and the cool thing with like you guys were both saying was that anybody could pick up a controller and if they just, like my grandma and grandpa used to bowl in a league back when they were younger.
No way.
Least. And and that got me into bowling. But so I think putting that controller in my grandma's hand and saying like, oh, it's just like a bowling ball, just swing and let go of this one button. You know, there's just one button to worry about realistically, maybe two. But it was special to be able to see those people get involved in this this hobby that we have, or even just see them try something new. And Alex brought up that great point too about like looking away from the screen and seeing like your family like flailing around in the living room with their arms as they try to beat each other to death in boxing, or swinging their arms left and right in tennis, or
throwing the Wii remote at the screen because they're just tired of the TV.
I needed an upgrade anyways. You're right though. Like just those moments were so magical, and I wonder if we'll ever get something like that again. You know, I know Switch Sports is a thing, but I wonder if Wii Sports just came out right, if it was just right time, right place. You know, because you guys are right too. There were other motion things that came out beforehand, but this was just so accessible. You know, you bought a Wii and it was just there. You didn't even have a choice if you wanted Wii Sports or not. You were
cheap
getting it
as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone I knew had a Wii. It was bonkers how successful that console was, at least in Denmark. Wii Sports was just the perfect party game. Like, if you had 3 friends over, you could play some tennis together, 2v2. You couldn't play baseball, but, you know, bowling was always a hit. And the great thing about Wii Sports is that there's very short games, but you can also play longer games like 9-hole golf if you want to spend longer time playing. And it's just very nice. I don't know what else to say.
It is effortless, isn't it, playing Wii Sports? I mean, someone's going to be clever and go in the comments and go, oh, actually, I find swinging a Wii remote is more effort than pressing a button. Yeah, no. I mean, it's effortless in terms of its difficulty. You know, there are harder modes, you know, there's a skill ceiling. But it is just, you know, in order to play the game, I don't think there's been a simpler game to play, honestly. Because everything is just so... rather than, you know, sort of using abstract concepts or anything like that, it is, here are some real-world sports that you can now play holding this chunky white baton in your hand. You know, it emulates exactly what you would expect it to in exactly the way it would. I don't think anyone went into, into Wii Sports Golf and was like, what do I do with this thing? You know, it's like you use it like a golf club, and nobody went, how do you use a golf? Maybe somebody said, how do you use a golf club? But that's a problem that Wii Sports can't fix. It's just pick up. It is the definition of pick up and play. Like, there are other systems out there, you know, other games that have done pick up and play, but you need to be familiar with how a controller works. And I suppose in a limited sense you do with Wii Sports in regards to navigating the menus, for example. But when you're in the game, you know, somebody who's more savvy can set that up. And when you're actually in the game, playing the game, doing the playing part, it's so easy. It's almost painful how simple they made it.
Yeah, and also, you know, there is the A and B button, but the layout is so simple. Also, like when it says on screen, press the B, you know, the B button is also shaped very differently, so you're never in doubt, like, which button am I going to press, which can be a small problem, you know, on a normal controller. There's 4 buttons that are alike, but the A button, very big, very, you know, just where the thumb is, and then the B button right on the back. It's just so easy, and like Alex says, just works marvelously.
I wonder how many people used to be afraid of gaming controllers. Like, you look at the N64 controller, and if you don't
like
play video
anti-Wii
games,
remote, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like, that thing is gonna, it's radioactive. I'm going to gain mutant powers if I touch the N64 controller. But in comparison, you have this Wii remote that looks like a TV remote, and I wonder if that really did help people feel build up the courage to play.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It looks like another common household item, and one that pretty much everyone is familiar with. And so it's just breaking another boundary, breaking another barrier rather. And I think that's what the Wii and Wii Sports by extension was all about. It was breaking down barriers. I mean, there was a reason that the Wii caused the the gaming industry to become as big as it is now. I mean, it's bigger than the film and the music industry combined. And I know a lot of that is I know a lot of that is mums playing Candy Crush, but who cares? It's games at the end of the day. And Nintendo, I think, was not only had a part in it, I think Nintendo was pretty much the catalyst for why we are where we are now. And although motion controls may not be sort of like a staple in gaming anymore, they're still around, you know? I mean, bloomin' heck, you'd look at something like, I mean, 1-2 Switch isn't exactly going to set the world on fire, but it's, you know, based all around that. And, you know, these days, everyone is clamoring for motion aiming when it comes to first-person shooters and third-person shooters and things like that. Everyone's like, oh, what about gyro? I mean, people don't really call it motion controls. What about gyro aiming? You know, and that was Splatoon that did that, really. But, you know, that all stems back to the Wii and Wii Sports. It kick-started a revolution. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. I don't care.
Also, guys, there's a thing we forgot to talk about, or just haven't brought up yet, the Miis. Because you can make yourself in the game, and that was one of the most fun things, to make your friends in the Mii Maker app, and then after you can play with that character in the game. It's the first game that introduced the Miis, which also was a very big thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, I would say that maybe not to such an extreme extent as motion controls. It was another barrier being broken down. You know, you didn't have to sort of think, oh, am I controlling this character or this character? It's sort of, oh, I'm controlling the one that looks like me, if you'll pardon the pun.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better, Alex. And you were already immersed with the controls, but that you're controlling yourself was just such a genius idea that, you know, paid off.
I mean, it was a hell of a risk, wasn't it? Realistically, this was such a different direction. Everyone was going towards the Gears of War. I know that wasn't out at the time, but just, you know, it's a good example. You know, sort of rough and gritty, and I mean, there were loads of browns in that generation, just in the color palette. And Nintendo was just like, nope, not even going to do HD. I mean, arguably a mistake, but it paid off for them. You know, they got this 480p system. It was basically a souped-up GameCube with a funny controller that looks like a remote TV control, and bish bash bosh, they changed the gaming landscape.
Like, thinking about the Wii and Wii Sports and the Miis and everything too, you know, it really, all of it just kind of came together at the, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I wonder what Wii Sports would be like without the Miis. I wonder how much people would have played around with the Mii Maker without something like Wii Sports to actually go and use your creations on. You know, if Twilight Princess didn't release on the Wii, you know, on launch, would gamers like me have even been interested in getting a Wii right away? Would Wii Sports have looked engaging enough? You know, and you know, we still had some. There were some kind of like mature-ish games, like Red Steel, I think, launched on the Wii early, but otherwise it was a lot of like movie tie-ins and like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and I just wonder if we didn't, did Wii Sports look as interesting on the outside as it was on the inside, you know? I'd be curious to be, you know, go back and be a fly on the wall and see like what it was like at Nintendo, like during the development phase of like Wii Sports and the Miis and you know, and deciding on these launch games and all of that, because it really did, like, it just, everything happened at the perfect time, and I can't picture the Wii without these games and the software, you know, to make Miis. It just wouldn't be the same.
I mean, when you think of Wii, you think Wii Sports. At least I do, and I think a lot of people associate the Wii with Wii Sports because, you know,
it's
a lot
in the
of
name.
people. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what to say.
I think one of the major things that really, really means that Wii Sports has been escalated is the simple fact that it was a pack-in game. You bought a Wii, you got Wii Sports. It wasn't a choice, and it wasn't like, oh, maybe you'll get Wii Sports, or maybe you'll get Mario or something. You bought a Wii, you got Wii Sports. You know, it was a done deal. It was expected, and as a result, you know, I imagine there were plenty of people out there that saw the Wii as the Wii Sports machine. It was just a machine that let you play these sports games, and they didn't really think about other software. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't aware, but they didn't care. Just like, well, why would I? I got Wii Sports. Whack, 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 whack. Look at the tennis ball go.
Well, if you look at something like 1-2 Switch that launched on the Switch, I think that game had massive potential to be sort of this revolutionary title in a way as well. You know, like there's a lot of fun. I know. Bury me. There's a lot of fun that can be had with that game. But I don't want to say that Nintendo got greedy necessarily. But maybe they knew that the Switch could sell without it, or maybe they were going to sell the Switch at more of a loss if they packed it in. But I would have loved to see how that game could have changed the way that we look at the Switch, or just even the people that play the Switch as well. Because I think whenever I took that game around to like family events or just, you know, friend activities or whatever, we always had a ton of fun playing it. But I think the fact that not everybody had it was just, you know, you just didn't hear as many conversations and popping up about the game and stories about it, and you know, that word of mouth wasn't really there for 1-2 Switch. And I just wonder if we'll ever see that come back, or you know, it could have had the potential to land like Wii Sports did, but they just didn't.
I have a theory about that. I don't want to hang around on it too long, but I do think the reason they didn't pack in 1-2 Switch, even though it feels like a pack-in game, gonna be honest here, is because they didn't want the Switch to have the same image as the Wii, because they did that with the Wii U, and it went to floppity floppity flu flu.
I think you're right, but just imagine if it was a pack-in game, it would have sold over 100 million units. Holy.
I think you guys make a good point too, that the way that the Switch would have been viewed, right, is kind of what you're saying, like that people would have looked at it as this potentially casual machine again, even though, you know, we still had Zelda launched with the Switch. Maybe the objective from Nintendo, maybe we would have looked at it and not really been sure what they were up to. Are they trying to make this the Wii 2, you know, which the Switch is not. It's so completely different. And that's so impressive to see that the Switch is still doing so well, even though, you know, I think nowadays there are more people that play games, and I'm getting into a topic that isn't even Wii Sports related, so I'm gonna shut it down. But yeah, I think I agree with that theory, or I'd believe it, is what I'm trying to say.
I think it does it says a lot when I have to remember the 1-2 Switch exists.
Oh yeah.
Not that I ever sort of think that it never came out or anything like that, but if I think about, sort of Switch launch games, I genuinely forget about 1-2 Switch, because it just isn't there in my mind. Whereas when I think about Wii games generally, bam, Wii Sports. It was a pack-in game, everyone played it, everyone loved it, it was this brand spanking new idea, and I don't think that would have happened with 1-2 Switch, to be honest, because it's a bit different, should we say. But Wii Sports is good.
But now, Wii Sports is getting a second chance on the Switch with Switch Sports, and I'm excited to see how that does, now that, 1-2 Switch didn't break any worlds, per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a different landscape now, but who knows? Only time will tell.
Exactly. The only thing we didn't really talk about, the games were simple, but there were a lot of things, in tennis you could make the fast serve, and in baseball you could hold down A and B and do a weird serve, stuff like that just added. So it added so that, casual people could easily pick it up, but you could also be skilled, in bowling you could do these crazy, curve balls and stuff, and that also made it much more fun for people who, that it just wasn't, you can only do one type of shot. There were multiple types of shots, which just elevated a rather simple experience to be more diverse for different skill levels.
Absolutely. It's a classic example of easy to play, tricky to master. Although, I wouldn't necessarily say it was tricky to master, but it's the same principle.
It kind of added a bit more magic to the whole thing too, right? And just, being able to learn that these things are there and then spread that, amongst your friends and be like, oh, did you know that, like I think for bowling, for example, I don't remember, I'm assuming the other sports had this too, but if you got into like the pro tier for bowling, right, you got like a sparkly ball, or like if you held,
Yeah,
I think
you
it was
got
like if you held it.
ball or something, didn't you?
No, it was sparkly.
Okay, I'll shut my mouth.
No. Well, so speaking of color, I think if you held it was like the D-pad, or if there was a certain button when the game was loading, like into the bowling scene, or onto the bowling out like lanes, I think you could change the color of your ball depending on like what button you were pressing or the D-pad direction, and
There was a similar thing with tennis. If you held 1 and 2 down, I think, then the tennis court, instead of it was green, it was like a blue court. Stuff like that was just really fun, to tell your friends, oh, if you can do this. It's stories like you can share in the playground, really.
And that sort of thing only lifts an experience like this, doesn't it?
Si, senor.
So, there you have it. That is why we believe that Wii Sports is iconic. Do you feel that it is iconic? You should, because it is. Let us know why in the comments down below, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.